Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood is a very well-rounded series, mixing together elements of drama, action, comedy, adventure, and fantasy. It's set within a militaristic country styled after Europe's Industrial Revolution, with a bit of a steampunk influence to spice things up. One major difference between our two worlds is the usage of alchemy. In our world, it was an early form of chemistry, but in their world, it's a form of magic, where characters can create simply by drawing a transmutation circle and activating it. Here, alchemy seems to be reimagined into a more visually appealing form of magic, but in actuality it feels more like a realization of the myths surrounding alchemy in its time, such as transmutation circles, the Eye of Truth, and even Philosopher's Stone. This series makes many references to actual alchemy, both literal and poetic, but they mix in enough fantasy that you could never really tell unless you did your own research. In their childhood, they pick up their father's interest in alchemy, learning at a young age until their mother dies, when, in their youthful ignorance, they try to commit this forbidden act and bring their mother back to life. This quickly became disaster, as they learn why human transmutation was such a forbidden act, as Ed sacrifices his left leg, his brother sacrificing his entire body, then after this, Ed doing the quickest thing that he knew possible, sacrificing his right arm to attach his brother's soul to a suit of armor that was nearby. From here on out, these brothers live a life of hardship, traveling through the country in search of clues that might lead them in the direction of the legendary alchemical enhancer known as the Philosopher's Stone, so that they may return their bodies back to normal. While on their journey, they discover corruption and danger around every corner, while also forming bonds with invaluable friends. This description could be applied to both Fullmetal Alchemist from 2003 and Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, but the question you're probably all asking is, which one should I watch first? Personally, I love both series, but I would recommend watching the 2003 series first, as it contains a lot of filler, but also has a bit of a stronger introduction to the characters and its story, and furthermore, after watching Brotherhood, I doubt you're going to want to go back to an older series and watch filler. If you don't want to watch all of the 2003 series before seeing Brotherhood, you could get away with just watching the first 12 or 15 episodes of it, and if you don't want to do that, don't worry, it's not that big of a deal. If you just want to stick to one series, then stick to Brotherhood. Start and finish with that, because it's closer to the manga, it's an accurate translation of it, and also, it's a complete story. The first series from 2003, that has mostly filler to it, and you're not going to get that complete story. The plot unfolds gradually as Ed and Al travel across Amestris, looking for clues, solving problems, and meeting people who make up this colorful cast of characters that stay relevant through most of the series. During their quest for truth, they encounter many threats ranging from false prophets, hoping to build an army, to people that are willing to commit genocide for their own personal gain. What I really loved about Brotherhood is that all of the main characters and most of the supporting cast are very well developed, as they change over the span of the entire story, and sometimes they even take episodes to go back and view the past of some of these characters, which I really enjoyed. In fact, my favorite flashback from the series, which is easily one of my most favorite moments from the entire series, was the flashback taking you into Hohenheim's life, which was a character that I wish that the series from 2003 had explored more of. Of course, the stories are different because that one was filler, but when we explore his life, I felt that it was very well written, adding more mystery to the character, but also giving you some of the things about his life that you wanted to know, and I really enjoyed the fact that Brotherhood had so many characters here that they explored their lives and caused them to develop throughout the series, that in itself was a feat. With all of these positives come a few negatives, and some of the flaws that I have with Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood is the fact that it has the potential to be this very mature, very dark, and very dramatic series, but I feel that they lose a lot of that potential by adding so much comedy. For example, there's a character in Brotherhood who uses human transmutation and sacrifices her uterus and also some of the other organs she has inside, and because of this, she will chronically throw up blood randomly silly, and the series uses this as some sort of comedic relief, where she just randomly do it just to break up some of the tension, and that's not funny. She has a serious medical condition here, and they shouldn't make light of it, and especially because she's such a strong character that's actually pretty important of the series. I felt that this was detrimental. This isn't the case for everyone, but I felt that it was prevalent enough to hinder the development of some characters which could have been much better. Honestly, I felt that they pushed the jokes a little bit too far with this. Now, you have so many characters here that have these angry outbursts randomly, and don't get me wrong, this was a series that did make me laugh a lot, but I felt that 80% of the jokes here were jokes that just weren't funny, or jokes that were made in the expense of something that could have been taken more seriously. In addition, I feel that Brotherhood features much cartoon violence that can sometimes take away from the seriousness of the fight itself, where they will shape projectiles in the fists, or shape parts of the ground into arms that could freely move around and do things, and shaping things into the likenesses of the characters' faces during combat, and these are life-threatening battles, so at times it can be funny, and you know, it works for the series sometimes, but other times I feel that it kind of takes away. Some of these fights can get so serious and life-threatening for some of these characters as they get inflicted with these really deep wounds and just bleed all over the place, and you have characters that when they're fighting against their opponents, it really feels hopeless, where it takes a few of the main characters plus 20 or 30 soldiers against one opponent, and they're still struggling. Some of these fights are really intense. Some of my favorite fights in Brotherhood were anytime Mustang threw down. You could tell he was so OP that when they wrote the story, they tried to use him sparingly just because of how powerful he was, and it makes sense because all he has to do is snap his fingers and burn his enemies to a crisp. No matter how many they are, no matter how strong or how big they are, if he just stands there snapping his fingers, as long as it's not raining, then they're going down. Some of my other favorite fights from Brotherhood were anytime that Sloth was in battle, because he was such an immovable, unstoppable force that it took so many people just to slow him down. Alex and his sister fighting against him, who are two of the strongest characters in the series, and Sloth doesn't care, and he is really strong, so I really like the feeling of hopelessness that you got out of watching any of the Sloth battles, because he was just unstoppable at points. And of course, any fight with King Bradley, his skill with the swords were honed to perfection, leaving you on the edge of your seat, because you knew that if he was in the scene, it's possible that somebody was gonna die there, just because he doesn't simply fight. It feels more like he's actually hunting you instead of fighting you. On the downside of combat, alchemy feels too magical, and there's really little strategy involved with alchemists in combat, leaving them to feel like they're these one-trick ponies where Ed will just move the wall to trap his opponents, create hands to trap his opponents, turn his arm to a blade 1,000 times, and it really feels like they repeat these same steps over. And you have other characters like Alex Louis Armstrong, who continuously, he would either move the ground or he would make projectiles out of the ground, and I know he is an earth alchemist. That's his specialty, is moving earth and all. And then you have Mustang, who just snaps his fingers and creates fire. It really felt like they didn't have enough variance of the tactics that these characters use, because Brotherhood is filled with fights. There's a lot of fights here, and I kind of got tired of seeing these exact same things happen over and over again. As for the presentation, Brotherhood is beautiful. I love how well they articulated the scenery, from the open countrysides to the populated cities to the desert ruins. It all looks great. The emotions of these characters were beautifully animated through the usage of their eyes. You could tell everything that these characters were feeling, and because of that, they grew on you faster, causing you to care about them. The fights and the alchemy were very fluid and smooth, and I felt that the animation of the series was consistent from beginning to end. Moving on to the audio, Brotherhood had a great soundtrack. I liked all of its openings and closings, but my favorites were, I think, openings 2 and 3. They were great. Moving on to the voice acting, I really can't say anything about the original Japanese audio, because every time I watch Fullmetal Alchemist, I always watch it with the English dub. It had a great English dub back in 2003, and they use most of the same cast here with Brotherhood, and it's still great. It's one of the best dubs in my opinion. Not only are the voice actors cast well for the roles that they're playing, but they do a great job job of conveying the emotions that these characters are feeling, so you're free to watch this in sub or dub, however you like. Of course, my preference with this series would be dub. As for my overall score of Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, I give this a 9 out of 10. The ending left me with that void that all great series should, but this actually offers you one more episode past the conclusion of the story that I really loved, getting to see the wrap up of all of the characters, and I really love seeing this, especially with that picture board at the end of the episode. If you're watching the last episode of Fullmetal Alchemist, don't skip the closing. You have to watch it all because you see all of the pictures on this board that show everything that happened after the ending of that one episode with the future of the characters, and I thought that that was a great touch. I'm a big fan of Fullmetal Alchemist, everybody knows this, but I actually wanted to rate Brotherhood an 8.5. Then I realized that I was comparing this too much to its 2003 anime in certain ways. There were some characters that were developed better than in Brotherhood, that were Lust, Izumi, Nina, Tucker, and Hughes, just to name a few. This is why I say to watch the 2003 series first, just because some of the characters had a bit more of a development within that series, even though it was filler for the most part. Still, go ahead and check it out. So let me know your thoughts about Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood in the comments section below. Thanks for all your support with your likes and your comments. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.